And welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'll be showing you how I made this beautiful silk dress from scratch. So if this sounds like what you are interested in, make sure to stay to the very end of this video and do not forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment. Okay, so let's get started. To make this dress you need a basic bodice pattern and a sleeve pattern. If you don't know how to draft one, there will be a link on this video and on the description box, so you could watch the videos to learn how to draft the basic pattern. So for my pattern, I have traced out from my block, and I'll start by labeling the pattern so you don't get confused about the lines, and then I'll move forward to extending the length of the pattern to my desired length. So the first line I labeled is the bust line, the next one is the true bust line, the under bust line, and the waist line. So I'm just writing on that part as the new waist line. So if you watch the video on how to draft a basic bodice pattern, you would understand all these lines. Okay, and yeah, once I'm done labeling, here is the hip line, and I'm just labeling it on the front and the back pattern, and now I'll extend the pattern to my desired length. Now to extend the pattern, you need to get your knee point. So from my waist, I just measure my knee point and I'll draw a line across. So from my knee point, I'll connect the lines from the hip straight down. So I'm gonna measure what I have on the hip line, and then I'll mark that same measurement on the knee point in order to get a straight line. And once that is done, there will be a space in between the front and the back pattern. So that space, I'm going to divide that space into two on the hem line and then connect from the knee to the measurements, like to the middle of the space in between the front and back pattern, in order to have a bit of flare to the dress, like on the under part from the knee point. I hope that makes sense. So I already marked the midpoint of the pattern on the hem line. Now I'm just connecting using my ruler from the knee point to the midpoint of the line. As you can see, the line is a bit slanted. That's the flare I am talking about, and I'll do the same thing on the center back line. From the knee, I'll connect it to the edge of the paper just to give it a bit of flare. Now moving forward on the upper parts, because we're making a off shoulder dress, so I'll be working from the chest line. So I'm just going to draw a line across so we have the front and back on a straight line, and on the center back I will be working with the true bust line. So I'll come down a bit just to have a bit of like a V slanted shape on the back, because we don't want the back to be fully straight. Okay, so I'm just going to connect that as well using my ruler from the chest point to the true bust line. Now it's time to shape the dress. So initially I plan on adding a zip at the side or at the back of the dress, but I later changed my mind because I want the dress to be free on me as the material is very soft, so I don't want anything that will stiff up the material, so I decided to just make it a bit loose in a way that I could fit it on without a zip. So to shape it, I'm just gonna measure what I have on the bust line, then I'll take the excess out on the true bust line, which I'm currently doing, and I'll measure the waist and also take the excess out. So as you can see, there is no waist dart on this pattern because we don't need any darts on the waist of the dress. So all the excess measurements will be taken out from the side of the dress. And as usual, on the hip line, you need to go up 5 cm on both the front and back before connecting the shape measurements. And on the armor curve, I came down 2 cm because I'll be adding sleeves. So whenever you're adding sleeve to a dress, you have to come down 2 cm. So initially the curve is supposed to be at the bust line, but because I'm adding sleeve, I came down 2 cm and then reconnect the curve. So now I'm going to connect my point. I have measured my pattern and I have taken out the excess I want to take out. So this depends on how you want the dress to be on your body. If you want it fitted, then you have to use your exact body measurements when shaping it, but because I want it a bit loose, so I just added a bit of numbers, like a bit of measurement to my body measurement. So I just marked the 5 cm on the hip line, and as you can see, I flipped the curve over to connect that, and I'm just going to blend that connection point so it's well connected and there is no sharp edge. Okay, so I'll do the same for the back and then we can move forward. Now from the chest line to the under bust, I'll be placing a paper on top to trace out that part. That will be the part that will go over the dress to make the off shoulder. So now I'm just drawing a straight line in order to get the paper straight, and I'll cut that out, then use the same paper to trace out from the chest to the under bust. So on this video I traced out from the chest to the true bust, but please do from the chest to the under bust, because from the chest to the true bust is not wide enough. So I later added to the width of the measurement, and now I'm just drawing the underarm dart because I'll be transferring the shoulder dart to the underarm. Okay, now I'm just cutting through to separate the front and the back in order to open up the underarm dart so I can close the shoulder dart. Now I'm going to place the paper I cut off from the top part of the pattern to trace from the chest line to the on the bust line. So feel free to use a clean paper for this part so you don't get confused. So what I basically did is to trace from the chest point to the on the bust. Like I said, I traced the true bust line instead of the under bust, but I later added to the width because as you can see, this width is not wide enough, and I also trace out the armhole curve because you want to have the armhole curve on the traced out part as well, because that's gonna help you when you're cutting on fabric. Okay, now after tracing out, I'm going to separate the front and the back pattern completely from each other, then I'm going to close the darts, add the paper in like underneath the dart, so when I cut on fabric I know where the dart it's going to be, and then I can use my tracing wheel to trace that part out. Okay, so for the back I'm just doing the same thing, following the same slanted line on the back because we want the back to be a bit lower than the front. Okay, now I'm just going to draw a straight line to connect the two armhole together so they are on a straight line, and then I'll cut off the extra paper on the piece I just traced out, and then I'll put this aside and continue working on the main pattern paper. This will be useful much later when we're done cutting on fabric and when we need to cut the beads that will go over the dress and the sleeve. Now I'm going to close the shoulder darts and then we blend the armor, because when we close the shoulder darts the armor automatically reduce, like move forward. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just going to remark that and blend it back to the armor. And now I'm cutting the back style line, which is the slanted line we drew at the back, because the back is slightly lower than the front. Okay, and in between both pattern, later this piece will be separated into two and the sleeve will be placed in the middle in order to get the width of the piece that will go over the arm. Okay, so now I'm just going to completely separate the front and the back pattern, and then we can move forward. And now I'm going to connect from the knee point down to the end of the paper. As you can see, I connected it to the extra paper we had on the center back line, just to add a bit of flair to the pattern. The front and back has been separated, and now it's time to work on the sleeve pattern. So here is my basic sleeve pattern, and all I need to do is to shape it to the desired style I'm going for, which is off shoulder. So I would need my arm, my elbow and my wrist circumference, which is the width of my arm. So now I'm just measuring the width of my elbow and I'll be working with 32 cm. All I'll need to do is to divide 32 into 2, which give me 16 cm, and I'll place the tape on the middle line among the four lines and mark 16 to the right and 16 to the left. Okay, so you can either do it this way or mark it individually. Anyhow you do it, as long as you mark 32 cm or whatever your width of your elbow is, you are doing it right. So now I'll measure the dress pattern, what I have on the armhole, and then I'll transfer the exact measurement to the sleeve pattern. I'll repeat the same thing on the back pattern of the dress and transfer the measurement to the sleeve pattern. Now I have transferred the armhole measurement to the sleeve. I'm going to connect the 2 points using my ruler, then cut off the upper part of the sleeve as we don't need that anymore, and then continue with the shaping on the wrist and the arm part of the sleeve. Now I'll measure my wrist, divide the measurement into two, and take one part to the right and the other to the left. Repeat the same thing on the arm, and then I'll connect all the measurements together using my French curve. When I'm done cutting the extra paper off, I'll label the pattern as ×2, so you know I'll be cutting 2 of these to get the 2 sleeve, and then I'll move back to the front pattern, close the shoulder dart, tape that down so the underarm dart can be fully open, and then I'll place paper underneath, reconnect the darts. So when I cut on fabric, I'll trace that part out to know the right place to sew the dart on the dress. Okay. Now let me tell you about this very cool hack. Please make sure to iron your fabric before cutting. It makes a lot of difference. If you want to get a very clean finishing, make sure to do this process before cutting your fabric. Okay, so once I'm done pressing the fabric, I'll cut and then I can move to sewing. So I have gone ahead to cut my patterns on fabric, and the first thing I like to do before sewing the main fabric, I like to test run my stitch to see what it looks like, to know if I need to increase or decrease my stitch length. And once I am done with this process and I have gotten the right stitch I want, I will start sewing on the main fabric. So I'll start by joining the center back piece together. So like I said earlier, I wanted to add zip to the dress, but because I don't want anything to stiff the fabric, or because the fabric is very soft, I just want it to flow on my body. So I later sewed the whole back up, but from what you can see now, I am starting from just below the hip line down, but I later sewed the whole thing. So once I'm done joining the center back together, I will then join the front and back together on the side seam. And as you can see, I notched the main part of the fabric, like the waistline, the hip line, the knee point. This is just to make sure I am sewing the right parts together and to make sure everything falls in place perfectly, because this is what will determine your finished results. Okay, so make sure to do the same. And here is how clean the stitch look on the right side. So the next thing I'm going to do is to sew the dart on the front fabric, and then place the front and back right side together, making sure to pin all the notch points before sewing. Here is another hack. If you're sewing that on a soft fabric, do not backstitch. Just make sure to pull out enough thread to make double knot, and once you're done tying the knot, cut off the extra threads and your darts will come out really neat and clean. And now it's time to sew the front and back together on the side seam. And like I said earlier, I'll be pinning all the notch points together in order to sew them on the right part. And one thing I need you to take note here is the dart. So the dart should be folded downward when pinning the front and back together. So that's the part I'm about to pin. As you can see, the dart is folded downward and not upward, so make sure to do this and smoothing out the dart before pinning. So once I'm done pinning, I'll sew the both sides seam together, and then I'll move over to overlock. I'll do the overlocking off camera because I really don't have time. I made this dress, I think, under a day or two, I think, so I could not really film all the everything I did. So it's very straightforward. It's just sewing the two sides seam and then overlock the seam together. So once I'm done sewing, I'll overlock, and then I'll also sew the sleeve together and overlock it. Then I'll join the sleeve to the dress. And here is what the dress look like after overlocking. The side seam are overlocked together as one seam, while the center back is overlocked separately, and I went ahead to give it a good press. This dress is giving. This is what it looked like on the wrong side, and I'll turn it over so you can see how pretty it looks on the right side. This dress is just so pretty. It's so simple, it's classy, it's everything. It's just giving, and the color made it more and more pretty. This dress could be worn for any event, simple wedding. Even a bride could wear this, like a minimalist bride could wear this as a wedding dress. It's just so pretty. So I hope you make one for yourself, and please make sure to choose the right fabric. A very soft fabric will do the magic. And if you make one, do not forget to show me what you've made on Instagram. My Instagram is Sheila Colors for my sewing, and my main page is at Bookie She. So for the sleeve, I'm going to join the sleeve together, overlock it, and then I'll show you how I sew it together with the dress. And this is the sleeves after sewing and overlocking them. Now it's time to hem the sleeve, and to do so, I'm going to fold the hem once, sew it round, trim off the excess fabric, and fold it over again. And for the second time, I'll make sure to stitch on top of the first stitch I made. So this is it, and once that is done, here is the finished look. In my opinion, I would say this is the best way to stitch, to hem a silk fabric. You have to do it in two pattern or two dimension. You fold it over once, trim off the excess fabric, and fold it over again. So now I'm just pinning the dress and the sleeve together. making sure the seams matches on the underarm point, and I'm going to sew it together, overlock it, and I'll repeat the same thing on the other side, and then we can move forward to the part that goes over the dress and the sleeve, which is the off shoulder part. Now it's time to cut out the piece that will be going over the top of the dress. So remember the piece I traced out earlier, and I mentioned I traced out from the chest to the true bust line instead of the chest to the under bust line. So the fabric, I have added the remaining length that I needed to add, and now I'm just going to fold the fabric just like I'll fold the fabric when I'm cutting a normal pattern. So it needs to be unfold in order to get the right circumference that will seal up the edge of the dress. So once I get the fabric folded and every part is matching nicely, I will then place the piece I traced out earlier. The center front goes on the folded parts and follow by the sleeve and then the back pattern. So now I'm just going to place the center front piece on the front part, which is the folded part, and I'll get something to hold that down in place. Then I'll place the sleeve in between the two pieces, because remember the piece is also going to be sewn over the sleeve, so you need to get the width of the sleeve from your like arm point to the other arm point, like at the back. So to get that, you just need to place the sleeve just like I'm doing now, and then place the back pattern, and then I'll cut out the excess fabric and also cut out the style line of the back. So when I'm sewing, this is how that part will be sewn to the dress, but we don't need to separate it because it's just gonna be one piece that goes around the dress. Okay, so once this is done, I'll show you how I sewed this to the dress without any visible seam on the right side. Now before I sew the upper part of the dress, I made these two straps which I will use to secure the dress to my body. Remember, the dress is made to be loose so I can fit it on, and when I wear it, I will be tying the straps at the back so it stays perfectly on my body. Okay, so I'm just pinning the strap to the back part of the dress where the bodice and the sleeve meet at the top of the back. I will do the same on the other side, and then I'll start pinning the upper part, which is the off shoulder part, to the dress. So what I did, because I don't want any visible seam on the right side, I sewed one part of the fabric to the dress right side facing each other, and I folded the whole of the dress in between the fabric and sew it to a point, turned it out, and I finished the rest with hand stitch. Now I'm just matching the center front notch points together. So what I did, I don't have that part of the video, I sewed one part round before folding the whole of the dress in between, and I'm going to sew it round to a point and then turn the dress out. And this is what it looked like after sewing it and turning it out. So I am still going to sew it more, so I am left with just a tiny space where I'll finish up with hand stitch. This is the center back. I joined the center back together, matching the seam at the back, and this is what it looks like after sewing it. This is the tiniest part. This is the only part remaining, and I'm going to finish that with hand stitch very neatly. I'll give it a good press and you will see what it looked like.